Are you really free? Jesus says in John chapter 8, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And then later on in the chapter, Jesus makes the statement, "If the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed." Freedom is the fruit of being a true disciple. As followers of Jesus, we should all be living and walking in freedom, but many of us are not experiencing the joy of true freedom. Why is that? Let's take a look. One of the biggest hindrances to really being free is shame. Shame, as Brené Brown puts it, is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. She also differentiates between shame and guilt and explains that they are best understood as the difference between I am bad and I did something wrong. In the New Testament, the Greek word used for shame means the confusion of one who is ashamed of anything. And the word used for ashamed means to shrink back and to disfigure. So we see that shame affects our identity, our minds, our self-awareness, and our behavior. In Mark chapter 5, we read the account of Jesus entering the area of the Gerasenes and his encounter with a demon-possessed man called Legion. I believe it's a powerful illustration of how shame can affect our lives and how Jesus wants to set us free. First of all, Jesus wants to drive out shame. Just as Jesus was intentional about entering a region under the influence of the enemy to bring deliverance, so Jesus wants to enter our lives to drive out shame. Secondly, shame causes us to hide. The demon-possessed man hid himself among the tombs, and just as he dwelt with the memorials of the past, so those who carry shame hide themselves because they dwell on the past. They dwell on what was done to them or what they did that they are ashamed of. Thirdly, shame cannot be subdued. The people couldn't bind the demon-possessed man or control him, and in the same way, shame cannot be subdued. No amount of human effort can solve the problem of shame. You can try and analyze it, ignore it, or suppress it, but that won't get rid of it. Only Jesus can drive out shame in our lives. Fourthly, shame causes disfigurement. The demon-possessed man was disfigured by the enemy, and so he would cut himself and disfigure himself. In the same way, shame disfigures us and causes us to disfigure ourselves. Because we fear being found out, judged, and rejected, we put up a facade and disfigure ourselves so people will love us and accept us. Fifthly, shame causes confusion. The demon-possessed man was not in his right mind, and day and night he would cut himself and cry out. Shame affects the way we think about ourselves and can cause confusion. We become confused about our identity and confused about how we see others and how we think they see us. Sixthly, shame affects our identity. When Jesus asked the man what his name was, he replied, "I am Legion, for we are many." The man carried the identity of what possessed him, and in the same way, shame can so influence us that it begins to define who we are. After Jesus had driven out the legion of demons and set the man free, the people came to see what had happened. It then says that they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. Isn't that wonderful? They saw him sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. In the same way, when Jesus drives out shame in our lives, he sets us free and we are seated with him, clothed with him, and we receive his mind. That is true freedom. Being seated with Christ in heavenly places, being clothed with his righteousness, and receiving his mind so we can know the truth and be free indeed. And finally, we read how Jesus told the man to go back to his family to tell them how much God had done for him, but how he did more than that and went to many cities to testify about Jesus. I'm convinced that when shame is removed, we become free and unashamed to tell people how much Jesus has done for us. Freedom empowers us to witness. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Jesus wants us to live and walk in true freedom. He wants to enter our lives and drive out any shame we're still carrying. But just as Jesus was crucified and hung naked on the cross, so we need to become naked as we expose our shame through confession. The only way to get rid of shame and its destructive influence is to bring it out into the open and to nail it to the cross. That's why James tells us to confess our sins to one another so that we will be healed. I want to encourage you to bring your shame to Jesus, and if necessary to confess your shame to someone, so that it can no longer hide and hinder your freedom. Don't allow the enemy to use shame against you, but take hold of the truth of what Christ has done for you. Then you will know the truth and you will be free indeed.